In this video, I'll be talking about 5 common procurement mistakes that people make each and every day. So if you're a business owner that currently utilizes procurement within your business, this video is the one for you. I'm Tyler Barker and I own Kohler Supply. We're a family-run firm who has spent the last 30 years working with businesses ranging from 7 to 11-figure turnovers across a variety of different sectors. It's our job to partner with those businesses and ensure that we are taking control of their supply chain, giving them the freedom to achieve their vision and their mission. Mistake number 1 that people make is sending parts or product to the wrong supplier. Now, I always use this analogy when I think of a butcher and a baker. We all know that if you need a loaf of bread making, you would go to the bakery. If you needed your meat cutting, you would go to the butcher's. But what people don't realize is that each supplier, when you are in procurement, has a specialty. You wouldn't approach your butcher and ask them to make you a loaf of bread. Now, they might have flour, they might have eggs, they might have the ingredients to make it. They might even have an oven. But if you were to ask them to produce it for you, they would give you a cost that is far higher than that of the bakery. They would also give you a product that is nowhere near the level of quality that the bakery right next door would give you. This is the problem that people are making when they are picking their suppliers. They are not understanding what their capabilities are, what their specialties are, and they are tripping up. When they receive a quotation from a supplier, they might just look at the cost, the lead time, and potentially some terms around that particular quotation contract. Now, if we take the analogy I've given about the butcher and the baker, the butcher might charge you £4 for a loaf of bread compared to the bakery who might charge you £1. But we all know that the quality is better from the bakery, and you can be fooled into paying more money for your product, expecting a higher quality finish, when you know that if you were to just have found the right supplier, i.e. the bakery in this instance, you would end up with a better quality product for a much cheaper price. And this is why you need to be selective and 100% certain when you are outsourcing your products that you are sending them to the right suppliers. Now, there is a difference, which brings me on to point number 2, where buying cheap can bite you in the arse. It is incredibly important to understand what you are buying and who you are buying from. And buying cheap, sometimes if your product allows for it, can be a viable option. But again, you need to understand and analyze the type of product that you are trying to buy. If, for example, you are building a safety critical component into your product, you cannot buy cheap, because buying cheap will lead to problems with quality, problems with delivery, problems with poor communication, and it can affect your business in the long run far more than if you were to just have spent that little bit more money up front by going to a more reputable supplier who, as I said in the beginning, is more fitting to that particular product. The next common procurement mistake that people forget to think about is the hidden costs. This captures so many people out when it comes to outsourcing products and buying from elsewhere. There are so many hidden fees that people forget to think about when they analyze a quotation that they've received. Look at the upfront cost and potentially the shipping. But what they forget to realize is that there are all of the additional hidden costs that can be included in a procurement quotation. One of the big ones that people forget about is the shipping terms. There are a variety of different shipping terms when buying from overseas that people need to understand, because if you don't, you can get caught out very badly on hidden fees. One of the most simplest ones is Ex Works and FOB, which stands for free on board. If you have received a quotation with Ex Works, quite simply this means that the supplier will not arrange for delivery to the port, which means you are now liable for shipping that particular product from that supplier's warehouse to your either choice of port or airport, however you're choosing to transport those goods. That can be a massive cost that you haven't quoted or thought about when it's come to valuing that particular job. Free on board means that the supplier will be responsible for shipping those goods to your desired point of transport, which again alleviates lots of hidden costs because it's already included in their quotation. So again, if you were to compare two costs from different suppliers, you might have one supplier that might charge $1 for 1,000 pieces, but it could be Ex Works. You might have supplier B who could be charging you $1.10 for 1,000 pieces. Every other metric you might consider could be identical, but if those shipping terms being $1,000 in total for Ex Works, $1,100 total for free on board, the free on board quotation is cheaper for you because they are paying for the goods to be taken to the point of transport for you. And if you went with the Ex Works option, you are going to end up with a bill for potentially $200, $300, $400 just to get the goods to the point of transport. By recognizing the shipping terms and using them in your favor, looking at FOB as a more favorable option, you will not get caught out in the long run with these hidden fees. One of the next big hidden costs that people don't think about is payment terms. Now, this is where negotiations with your supplier is really important because most suppliers will fight for a payment term that is in their favor, but don't allow them to do this. Try your best to negotiate with a supplier to ensure that the payment terms is at least equally fair to you and them. But obviously, this is a business for you where you are trying to succeed and you are trying to push the favor over to you and your business. So, some examples of payment terms from suppliers. We generally tend to see when buying from overseas that they ask for a 30% pro forma upfront payment. This means that you now have to pay immediate funds on a project before you have seen any return on those goods. This is a really bad way to start any contract, and again, your accountants are not going to be happy with you if you're taking out large orders with suppliers and having to pay 30% upfront each and every time. It will affect your cash flow. It will ensure you are getting the best value for your money. So, point number 4 brings me onto the negotiation with the suppliers. And this is where people can fall short each and every single time because everybody is fighting for the benefit of their own business. And what you need to try and understand is reaching a mutually beneficial agreement for both businesses will yield the longest term gain for both of you. So, some of the things that you should be negotiating on. We've touched on payment terms, shipping terms. Cost is something that can always be negotiated on, but it's important that you outline what you expect from a supplier from the offset so that there are no misunderstandings after you enter into a purchase order of what both of you expect from one another. Negotiations with suppliers will always become easier after you've increased your spend with them. So it's important to understand that in the beginning, it may not necessarily be in your favor, but remember to continue to negotiate with the suppliers that you have after you've hit particular milestones with them. Maybe after you've spent the first $50,000 or $100,000, you could negotiate for better payment terms. So instead of paying for a 30% pro forma up front, what you might be able to negotiate with is paying for a 30% pro forma after the goods are made. This allows for both parties to see a long-term gain. They receive more orders from you and you receive a better payment terms. It's always important to remember that as you grow, you are growing together, and that keeping the relationship mutually beneficial will yield the best long-term results. That now brings me onto my final point. Point number 5 is falling for fake or false advertising from suppliers. Now, unfortunately, certainly in the Far East, we know that there is a lot of fakes and dishonest companies that are out there, and they do exist, and you can trip up if you do not do your due diligence. It is important to try your best to identify which suppliers might be trying to scam you out of your business. So, how might they do this? Number 1 can be through fake or falsified certification. Certainly when it comes to quality certification, when you're looking for particular suppliers, we all expect a supplier to have an ISO 9001 standard. And unfortunately, in these Far East countries, they can be falsified. So make sure that you are cross-referencing that certificate with the body who has granted it, and make sure that they haven't changed the name or changed the numbers on there just to send you a copy of a certificate that you have taken for gospel. Be sure to check it through. The next piece of false information that companies can give, certainly on the overseas side of procurement, is trying to tell you that they are a particular company when they aren't. Because they're thousands of miles away, they can find it very easy to send you photographs, videos, and pictures of their facilities or their factories, when in reality what they're doing is taking stock images and photographs from other factories and from other facilities that they don't own or have any affiliation with. So you can be hoodwinked into thinking that you're working with a factory that could have the best machines, the best standards, the best quality inspection that's known to man. But if you are not cross-referencing this with an in-person audit, if you can't get all the way to see the supplier, you can send somebody to do it for you. And I highly recommend doing that to ensure that the information that the suppliers you are using is accurate to what they are telling you. I have heard of so many horror stories from businesses who are sending business overseas to China and expecting to receive a high quality product. By the time that it arrives onto their doorstep, they realize they've received. The problem only then gets worse, because by the time you communicate this to the supplier and tell them that what you've received is not near the standard that you expect, they are not going to be willing to work with you on a remedy or a solution to fixing it, because they have made their money already. By the time the goods have landed into your warehouse, it is already too late. You have paid the money and they have no obligation to put that problem right for you. And it can be so costly, because you have now got to resource that product as quickly as possible with a new supplier who is potentially going to be double the cost. You might need to utilize air freight if you go overseas. You might have to go to a local supplier who could charge triple, and you're now back to square one and you've double paid for your product. And there is nothing worse than going overseas and being tricked by a supplier who is not who they say they are. So do your due diligence. So in my opinion, those are the 5 things that are the most common procurement mistakes that people make when going overseas to source product. If you like this video, smash the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.